Good morning everyone and welcome to this meeting of the full Licensing Committee. To begin with, can I ask the clerk to deal with the housekeeping measures, please?
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair in case of disruption. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of this building in Bourne Avenue. Finally, please can we ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 1 on this morning's agenda, apologies. Have we received any apologies for this morning's meeting?
Yes, Chair. Apologies for absence received from Councillor George Farquhar and Councillor Chris Matthews.
Thank you.
Chair, if I might, Councillor Fowler has been ill for the last 3 or 4 days, so I assume that that's why she's not here today.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. Item 2, substitute members.
Sorry, Chair. No substitute members today.
Thank you. I would at this point just like to welcome Councillor Toby Slade, who's joined us this morning to observe the meeting. Item 3, declarations of interest. Members, any declarations of interest this morning with regards to the agenda items? No, thank you. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. To confirm the following sets of minutes as an accurate record for the Chair to sign. Licensing Committee, 19th September 2024, and the Licensing Subcommittees of the 25th of September, 3rd of October, and the 13th of November. Are members happy that I sign those as a true and correct record?
Agreed.
Thank you, members. Item 5, public issues. There are no public issues received for this morning's meeting. Moving on then to item 6, review of Hackney carriage and private hire driver, vehicle and operator policies. I'd just like at this point to welcome Mr. David Lane, who's joined the meeting this morning, who's attending on behalf of the taxi trade, and now ask Nananka Randall, the Licensing and Trading Standards Manager, to present the report. Thank you, Nananka.
Thank you, Chair. So when BCP councils were formed, we harmonised the policies of the 3 legacy councils and produced separate policies for private hire and Hackney carriage drivers, vehicles and operators for ease of reference. Today we are reviewing the current policies, and the draft policies before you include tracked changes. The purpose of these policies is to protect the safety of passengers being transported within our licensed vehicles. Taxis and private hire vehicles provide a valuable resource to the local economy and support our school passenger transportation services and hospital transport services, as well as undertaking airport transfers and local journeys. We aim to ensure all our drivers are fit and proper, our vehicles are maintained and safe on the roads, and our private hire operators ensure bookings are fulfilled in a timely manner and support the licensing team in reporting any complaints or concerns to the relevant authorities, including the police, and safeguarding where issues arise. The policy set out our expectations for new applicants, licence holders, and set the standards for reissue of licence as well. In order to develop the draft policies, we have held workshops which included representations from our members that are here, the trade reps, which includes David Lane, who's in attendance today, officers and legal. In these workshops, we referenced the best practice guidance document published by the Department of Transport and the statutory standards for private hire and taxi vehicles, which was updated in November 2022. Outside of these workshops, officers have made small tweaks to the wording of the policies to provide clarity for applicants and to assist us when we are seeking compliance with the policies. Once a draft is agreed, there will be a period of public consultation, and then the matter will be brought back to you to discuss the consultation feedback and to agree a final policy. So with the permission of the Chair, I suggest we go through the table of contents of the table of changes that I've attached within my report, and I please urge members to ask questions as we go, and we've got the trade representative here to assist in answering any of your questions which may arise.
Thank you, Nananka. So, members, the recommendation is that members consider the draft policies put forward for approval and either agree the draft policies as presented or amend the draft policies presented and agree a final version of the draft policy ready for consultation. At this point, I'd like to invite Mr. Lane to come to the table, please, and would you be kind enough to address the committee?
Mr. Chair, members, on behalf of our association, I would like to thank the councillors and officers who participated in the workshops to prepare these updated policies you're going to debate and approve for consultation today. As part of the review, the opportunity has been taken to encourage the number of wheelchair accessible vehicles, as the authority has a responsibility under the Equalities Act 2010 to promote the number of WAVs available. Although not within the limits of the review, we would like to suggest that the committee arrange to receive an annual report on the level of complaints that owners and drivers have failed to accept bookings without good reason. Once the policies are finally approved, we would be pleased to take part in any publicity events promoting their strength and urging anyone within the conurbation requiring a taxi to use a vehicle licensed by BCP Council. This could possibly be in conjunction with Dorset Police and the PCC, amongst others. I now look forward to listening to your debate and, if the Chair agrees, explain our trade point of view on any matters requested by members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Can I now ask Nananka to go through the report, please? Thank you.
Thank you. This is tricky, so I've got my colleague here is going to have the policy documents up, and I'm going to go through the report. So I'm sure everyone's going to sort of struggle a little bit, but we'll get through it together. So I'm going to go through the driver policy first, because that's the first one that I mentioned in the report. So generally, most of the changes within this are minor amendments to the wording. Having had regard to the guidance, we are suggesting that we remove the current convictions policy that was included within the Appendix C, which is quite long and wordy, and actually replace it with a link to the statutory standards guidance, so that we're in line with what the government wants. It's much wider reaching, I think, and it's not quite so prescribed as to what is and isn't. So it allows more discretion when we're making these decisions, and it's, like I say, it keeps that transparency in the committee decision, so that it's really clear that we're following the statutory standards nationally, which I think a lot of authorities are adopting within their policies. So what I'll do is I'll just go through section by section. Obviously, as we go through it, if anyone's got any queries or anything around that, please do speak up. So 3.1, it was section 3.1 was updated, obviously just to reflect the policy dates and things like that. At section 6.3, this was a new paragraph just to ensure that it's clear that we will communicate any changes to the policy to licence holders. 7.5 as a minor amendment to remove a word. 7.6 and 7.7, again, minor changes to the description of the knowledge test. Yep.
So I was just going to say on the first one, on 3.1, the word replaces shouldn't be taken out. Just in case you just accept all the changes, it won't read,
Okay.
won't read correctly.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, replaces. Keep. Thank you. It's really hard when you sort of working through something for such a long time. We're blind, and track changes makes it really hard as well to see what you've actually done. So yeah, we will go through that. Thank you. So moving on, 7.9 Yeah, we've updated the wording to reflect that it's an ongoing requirement of the policy. Yeah, provided to sign up to the DBS service, and they've got to maintain that requirement basically, and that's really important because we automatically check the DBS status of all our drivers every 2 weeks. Actually, it's on an app that we check, and then if their status does fall off, we do follow that up quite quickly. 7.14, we've just put a new paragraph to clarify the reapplications timescales. The reapplication timescales following a revocation, isn't it? Because a lot of people, once they've had a licence revoked, say, well, when can I reapply? So we wanted to have a minimum requirement in there. I think that's 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah, 3 years. Hopefully everyone's happy with that. That's kind of what we had previously, I think, as a rule of thumb, but it just makes sure it's in there really clear for people. 8.5, we've removed the reference to Appendix C and added the link to the statutory guidance. As I've already explained, that's for around the convictions policy. And then at 8.6, we've obviously updated the wording to reflect the ongoing requirements again. 8.7 and 8.8 is again the clarification of the requirements to submit the DBS certificates and to maintain the update service, and the failure to maintain this, what happens. So that's quite clear there, hopefully, for everybody. At 8.9, we've again clarified the conviction standard, which is considered when assessing the fitness of drivers. And at 8.11, we've removed the reference to 6 monthly check, as I've said that we actually check them every 2 weeks now. 6 monthly is the minimum set by statute, by the statutory standards, but we're going over and above that, which has really been a boon to us, actually. It's really helpful. 8.12, we replaced the word should with must for the fit and proper criteria. And then 8.16 and 8.18 are minor amendments to the wording. 9.5 updated the wording to reflect the ongoing requirement for the DBS again. 9.9 and 9.10, we've added the word expired. I mean, do you want me to go through it in this detail? Is everyone happy with this, or are you? Yeah, okay, I'll keep going. 10.3, we've removed the requirement for safeguarding training prior to the knowledge test. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
They
we
do still
Yeah,
sit in.
it's required, not expected. That's what we've done, isn't it?
Yeah, no,
yeah.
we've just moved.
We've moved it down in
The
the order because not everyone passes the knowledge test. So it's better to get the knowledge test passed, and then you're going to progress in your application rather than do everything front loaded, pay a lot of money, and then actually you don't get through. So that's why that's been changed, yeah. And obviously then it's more fresher in their minds when they do start working because they've done it just before they start working. 10.5, we've deleted the section. 10.17 is a new paragraph relating to school passenger transportation. Yeah. And that was as a reflection of some of the feedback that we've received during the policy period, basically. 11.2 was clarity around the medical certificate acceptance. And 11.3 is the new guidance on when to undertake the medicals. And 11.5 was a minor amendment to the wording. Is that about right? Yeah.
Yep.
12.1, minor amendment to the wording. 13 was a new heading for clarity. Section 13. Yeah, Equality Act. Because I think, it wasn't right before, was it? I don't know what it was before because it's not showing it. 13.2, clarity around driver training for wheelchair accessible vehicles. And then at 13.3, we've references added regarding medical exemptions as required by the legislation. 13.6 and 13.7 is minor amendments as well. 14.1.1, we'd added clarity around the warning light at daily checks. That was as a consequence of the workshops that we held, and that was suggested,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
The other thing we discussed there was the removal of the requirement to have a first aid kit and...
Sorry, can you put your microphone on, please?
Did we remove that?
The requirement for the mech test of having a first aid kit and a set of light bulbs in the vehicle,
Yeah, I think
and a fire extinguisher,
Yeah, we've dealt
which
with,
best practice said is dangerous.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we have done that outside of this policy. Yeah. Gosh, I can't remember where I was now. Oh yeah, there. Yeah. 14.2, minor amendment to the wording. 15.2, replace should with must, and the word smart within the list. We want everyone to be smart. 14.2.d, we've amended the wording. 20.2 and 20.3 is new guidance and information regarding complaint handling and phased approach taken to enforcement. 20.3 and 20.4 amended wording for clarity. I didn't know whether you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, 20.3. I know you're expecting this because I emailed you. Hence the look. I just feel it's a little bit woolly. The sort of what is a non-serious complaint and what is a serious complaint. I think for both from a public perspective of knowing what they can complain about and what is what is deemed inappropriate, and also from a driver and from an officer perspective as well, of that make sure there is consistency between officers and between drivers and that sort of stuff. There is I've had the experience in the last 24 hours of two separate drivers driving incredibly badly, one of which definitely is prosecutable, I believe. So that's that the police can deal with that. That's fine. But equally, there is a sort of a level below that where the police aren't necessarily going to act on it, but it's still considered by the public and people around that driver as being inconsiderate, and what I would suggest falls below the standard of a professional driver of how they should act. And I think we're kind of missing an opportunity here to help drivers be better, help the public perception of drivers be better, because talk to any member of the public and who drives and they go, oh, taxi drivers, they're all awful kind of thing. You get that perception from many members of the public. I'm not saying it's definitely not true, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that there is a perception from members of the public that some taxi drivers aren't necessarily up to standard.
Okay, I take on board what you're saying, and it is really hard. And actually, our officers, we do a lot of work on consistency training, and when we're dealing with complaints, there's a lot of discussions in the office. Do we? Don't we? Where should we deal with this? Where should we do that? And I started to create a little document for what we would sort of do, but it's really, really hard because each one on its own merits. And a complaint about something can come in and you think, oh my gosh, that's really serious. But actually the information that we initially get and then the evidence that we then get and the other information around that point can be very difficult. And I will give you an example. So, a serious incident would be, I've got here some things like a safeguarding incident with a child or a vulnerable adult in the vehicle, a serious allegation about the driver's behaviour or assault by a driver, a drink driving allegation or a drug driving allegation. They're what I would consider to be serious, but not every single one of them would result in a referral to committee. Now, I can give you a really good example because, and it will give you a feel for what our drivers have to are presented with on a sort of a daily basis, and it talks around the care. And I think our drivers are really, really good. We are very fortunate. We've got an amazing set of licence holders. And recently, I dealt with a serious referral through our LADO, which is the local authority designated officer, which deals with safeguarding things that have come in from school. And this was, this is a really serious incident. This driver swore at a child and then put that child at risk because the child was adversely impacted later on in the journey because the driver wouldn't turn the radio off despite being asked. So I thought, oh gosh, that's really serious. Oh my gosh. So I contacted the driver. He was really shaken up about the whole incident. The child was a child. He was 16. He was a child. Through our passenger transportation, a lot of the children have got, complex needs. In this case, unfortunately, and the driver had been transporting this child for about 18 months. So he knew the child. They had a good working relationship. But on this occasion, the driver had lost attention. He'd parked up at the school with the child in the car. He took his eye off the child for a minute. The child punched him in the face. And the driver, completely taken underwear, went, oh, fuck, swore. He was really apologetic. It was a spur of the moment. He would never have dealt with that incident later. Later, when the child was getting back in the car, he knows the child doesn't like noise, and the radio was turned. There was no volume on, but the light was still on because it wasn't. And he said, I didn't want to turn the radio off because I didn't want to take my eyes off the child until he was secured in the back of the vehicle. And I just said, I'll turn it off as soon as you're sat down and you're strapped in, because he was, a little bit shaken up. And that was the incident. So initially you think, oh my God, that's really serious, and that we would. But when you've got all of that information, actually, we just gave him advice, and actually he stopped doing that journey then. But those are the type of things where something that comes in as a non-serious incident, when you go through it, can become serious. So it is really, really difficult to say, this is what we will do, this is what we don't do. It is a matter. And sort of minor traffic offences, if they're reported, I have to admit, we could say if there's no history, we probably wouldn't take any action.
It's more about sort of establishing a pattern of behaviour.
And that is why when we've set out the phased approach that we've got, you'll see that there's, whether there's no history or there's a history, or there's a history of pattern. So it could be a non-serious incident, but actually it's been the 10th time that they've presented that. So we've got a case management system, we log everything. Any complaints that come to us, we do log them all. They're on our system, and we then refer to that driver's history every time we deal with it, and we do triage it. I think on our website we do say, assaults and things like that must go to the police. Driving standard is not a licensing officer issue. We are not out there on the roads. That is not our job to punitively see how our drivers are driving. There's nothing in the guidance or anything, and you will see a lot of complaints on websites of the councils. It's quite clear, such as ours, that standard of driving is a police matter, and refer it to the police and the police safety, road safety website. That is what it is quite clear on there. We are dealing with the driver behaviour, the cleanliness, the standard of the vehicle, and the standard of service by our operators. And I think we have to have that clear distinction, because we aren't there all the time. We can't take on all driving standard things. Parking, that's not a licensing issue, that is a parking issue, and that's not for us. But I have sort of drafted something that I'm happy to send around, and we could maybe include that within the consultation and ask for people's opinions on what you would consider, generally, what would you consider to be a serious incident, what would you consider that you would want the officers to investigate and what not, maybe. Something we could take on.
A small follow-up to that. Sorry, Chair. Do you mind? Yeah. So I know we talked about it in the workshop, but I can't remember if it actually made it in there. But when quite often a complaint will go to the operator, and then maybe at some point down the line that operator then would drop that driver for whatever reason, but they don't seem to notify licensing that they've changed operators, or that there have been a complaint against that driver from an operator. Is that, did we firm that up? I'm trying to remember.
I believe the operators' policy, we have firmed up when the operators should be referring complaints to us and when they shouldn't be. A lot of complaints are usually, we didn't like the driver, the fare or whatever. So those sort of lower levels, but larger levels, and we've actually been we met with one of the larger operators last week and discussed this, and it will be an ongoing conversation in our taxi forum meetings about that. But we have, I believe it's later on in the operators, we've set much more stringent requirements for them to report complaints about drivers to us. But, you know, drivers do change operators for a number of reasons, not just because, you know, there's been a couple of complaints about them, because there's quite a lot of jiggery-pokery, toing and froing, you know, that one will offer better terms or whatever. So, you know, we try not to get involved in that aspect, but we're very, concerned about any complaints that go. And most of our operators are pretty good. If there's a problem, they will let us know.
I'm happy with your suggestion, Nananka, that we put something together to go with the consultation. I just want to ask the question, should a member of the public contact the council with regards to a near-miss incident, do you always automatically respond with regards to what the complainant should do if it doesn't fall under the council's jurisdiction?
Yeah, we would ask for the information about the near miss, and then we would log it on our case management system so that it is there as a record. And again, it just builds up that picture of a driver. So if we're getting a few, it's like, well, actually, you know, your standard of driving isn't up to par, and we would send them some guidance. You know, when we're just sort of sending guidance to drivers, sometimes we sort of say, we'll suggest you might want to do this course or that course. And then later on, when we're doing a formal caution or a warning, we say, well, you will do this course. So it's that sort of level of information. So we do take that, and we do provide them with advice.
Thank you.
Going to be doomed now. All right, where are we? 20.3. Oh, well done, yeah. So we've talked about that. 20.4, we've amended for clarity, and then obviously there's been a bit of a jiggery-pokery of the numbers because we also deleted what was there previously. So, yeah, take that as you will. It's quite difficult when you're doing a table of changes, when there's so weird changes. 20.7, we've removed the reference to the deleted appendix and updated the links to the guidance. And then we're getting into the appendices. So Appendix A, Section 2, we've minor amendments to the wording. Appendix A, Section 4, again, amendment to the legislation is corrected, just because there's been an updated to that. Section 5, amendments to found property made to take to the police station if not claimed, and that's been an internal change at most local authorities now. They hold it for a certain amount of time and then dispose of it, but most of it's claimed quite quickly. Section 6, added by email. Section 12, added all messages. Section 15, amended reporting time from 1 to 3 days and to report via email. Appendix B, we've amended the wording to the headings. Appendix B, Section 15 and 16, minor amendments. And Appendix C, we've deleted entirely. So that's the driver policy. Have anybody else got anything sort of to add? That was a relatively short one. The vehicle one's is really long, so we'll do the operator next because it's a bit shorter. And then I can take a deep breath before the vehicle one. Right, so the operator policy, generally suggested amendments are listed, mostly minor, but as we have actually discussed in Appendix A in relation to safeguarding and reporting of complaints, we've suggested to improve the ability of us to address issues and concerns about drivers and raising issue and reporting of safeguarding concerns by operators. So, Section 3.1, we're updated to amend the reflected updated policy dates. These two are the same in all of them, really. 6.3, again, to communicate changes to the policy to the licence holders. 7.11, minor amendment to wording, as well as 7.13. 8.2, amended wording around the DBS requirements and the right to work, just for clarity. 8.5 and 8.6 was a minor amendments to the wording. 8.11 is a new paragraph to clarify reapplication timescales. 9.2 and 9.3, further minor amendments to the wording. 9.4, we've removed reference to Appendix B and added a link to statutory guidance. So we've obviously deleted Appendix B, which was the convictions policy, as previously. And 9.5, we've clarified the conviction standards assessed when assessing the fitness. 9.7, replaced should with must for fit and proper. And section 14, we've added or subcommittee to all sections. 15.2 and 15.3, we've corrected an error and replaced the driver with the operator. It was obviously a historic error that was pointed out. Thank you, David. 15.5, we've clarified the delegated actions to the manager. And 15.6, we've corrected another error where it said driver instead of operator. And and also appendix reference as well in there. So 15.7, we've clarified the previous convictions assessment. And then we're moving on to the Appendix A, Section 1.3. We've deleted as it's duplicated in the following sections and was a bit confusing. 1.6, we've added requirement of long-term overseas absence for drivers. Sorry, there was a typo on that. It did say lot, but I worked it out. 1.8, a new requirement to provide information to the licensing authority on an annual basis. Yes?
Just in the typo, you've got noted to the licensing authorities and F to keep a record of long-term overseas absences of drivers and...
1.8.
1.6 typo.
Yeah.
It's 1.6.
1.6 F. Oh, yeah. G. Yeah.
Thank you. We will go through it again. It's hard to see when there's a typo when it's tracked changes as well. So yeah, thank you for that. I do like to note to people. Long-term absence. So 1.8 is the new requirement to provide information to the licensing authority on an annual basis. And section 2.1, we've deleted subsection F. And Appendix A, section 3, we've additional requirements for safeguarding and the DBS for employees. And finally, at section 4, new content relating to the recording and reporting of complaints to the licensing authority. So is everyone happy with that? Have we got on there, just looking at it again? Section 4, I just want to make sure that it does say where a driver has been removed from there. Yes, it has. Any driver, it's the last bullet point, so we have captured that. So that's really useful, I think. So thank you. Any other queries on the vehicle? No, operator policy. Oh, God. It's going to be a long morning. Everyone happy? Right, so this next one's going to be a right old slog because the vehicle policy is always the contentious one. And there's a few more bits that are a little bit more contentious in this one. So the vehicle policy, we are suggesting at section 16 that we remove the current quantity restrictions on the number of Hackney vehicles issued in the Poole and Bournemouth area. And we'll get to that. And then we've updated Appendix D as well on the setting out of the use of CCTV and dash cams to reflect current guidance. So we'll talk to those about those bits when we get to them as we go through the changes, if that's all right with everyone. Okie dokie. Right, let's go. Right. Section 1.2. The guidance has been reference has been updated. 1.3, deleted unnecessary wording. 3.1, updated policy date. Yeah, updated the policy date. 6.3, again, communication of changes to policyholders. 7.1, we've deleted the reference. 7.5 to 7.17, updated content relating to card payments. Just to clarify a bit and make it a bit easier to read, hopefully. 7.17, heading title changed and reference to Appendix A has been added. Am I going too fast for you? We're going too fast for Trudy, sorry. Just in case.
The scroll's stopped working.
Oh, all right. 8.2 of amendment of wording for clarity. 8.3, additional information included to clarify revocation of licence if MEC not completed. That is very new, but I think that quite works actually, just to give them a bit of a nudge. 8.4, 5 and 6, amended wording for clarity. 9.2, we've updated the wording to reflect it's an ongoing requirement, and 9.4 has been deleted. 10.2, amendments to the accompanying documents. 11.1, deleted and there's been a renumbering. And then 11.2, there's new information regarding wheelchair accessible vehicle driver requirements. 11.13, additional wording for keeping email up to date, because we do get that quite a bit. 11.5, minor amendments to wording. 11.5, current number has been deleted. So then 11.6, we've amended wording for clarity. And 12.4, we've removed reference to the deleted appendix. 12.6, criminality assessment link has been provided, as we've removed that appendix. And then at 13.9, we've amended the wording around dash cams. 14.1, we've amended wording to clarify space requirement standard for reference vehicle wheelchairs when we're assessing new applications for vehicles. 14.2 to 14.6, we've amended the wording for clarity. And 15.7, we've amended the reference. 16, we've amended the title section. And then 16.new, the new one in the new numbering has reflect no unmet need. So this is what we were talking about earlier. And then 16.2, we've deleted the wording. So did we want to just sort of stop there and talk about the unmet need? So currently we have a limit on the number of Hackney carriage vehicle licences that are issued in the Poole and Bournemouth area. There's no such limit in Christchurch area. And when you have a limit, you have to do a unmet needs survey every sort of 3 years as a general rule, which is what we have been doing. Our last 2 unmet needs surveys have said we have no unmet need, and we have the option then to either maintain the limits or not. At the last unmet needs survey and at the last policy, it was with a view to then removing the limits at a future date. This is the future date. We released licences as per our policy. So any new Hackney carriage licences that are issued, they will only be issued to a wheelchair accessible vehicle. And we haven't had a great take up of that, have we?
Not great.
We released 15 new licences in the Poole and the Bournemouth area. So that's 30 new licences a year per year. So in the last 3 years, 90 new licences were made available, as it were, and they have not all been taken up. It should be noted that Bournemouth had quite a big waiting list for Hackneys. Everybody on that list has been contacted and offered a licence. We haven't got a waiting list anymore in either of the areas, and we still have not had a great deal of take-up for those licences. How many?
I was just looking at that.
At the moment, I can tell you what we have got licensed for wheelchair accessible for our area in total is 8 private hires, wheelchair accessible, and 53 Hackney carriages that are wheelchair accessible. So, as a committee, we can only specify the type of vehicle for Hackney carriages. We can't specify if a private hire is wheelchair accessible or not.
20.
And under the new releasing of licences, I'll just finish and then I'll come to you, we've had 20 taken up in the last 3 years. Thank you.
20 over all 3?
Yes, over, yeah. Yeah. Councillor Chapman-Law.
Councillor Chapman-Law.
So just to give some sort of scale on that, so how many vehicles do we have licensed in total?
We have vehicles 836.
836. So, and how many WAVs have we got? 80 something.
50.
No. 661. Yeah, that's not many, is it?
61.
Councillor Dower.
This is probably going to sound really awful, but I know how I've been one of those persons who've been waiting for a taxi for ages because there hasn't been any available, and especially when it's chucking down with rain and whatever. So, and my personal perception is there's not enough taxis. And I'm thinking we've released the limit, we've removed that limit and said, well, if you want one, you have to make it wheelchair accessible, and that's obviously a block because people aren't applying for them. So is there discretion now? We could say, look, we're going to issue 15 licences altogether, and half of them must be wheelchair accessible, and then when they run out of the non-wheelchair accessible ones, then there's only the wheelchair ones left. Or would that be really sort of like disability discrimination?
Are you saying, therefore, you'd like to keep a limit? So if we don't have a limit, it's very difficult.
Yeah, but we're saying that all of them must be wheelchair accessible. Any new licences, is that what we're saying?
Only for Hackney carriages, so there's nothing stopping private hire vehicles going on. So what we've got vehicles-wise, we've got 402 private hire vehicles and 434 Hackney carriage vehicles. There's nothing to stop anyone putting a private hire vehicle on that's not wheelchair accessible. They're the pre-booked ones, and a lot of people pre-book journeys through an operator. Why people put Hackneys on is so that they can work outside the area. It's, you know, well, there is an option. They're more flexible. So Hackneys have to be licensed within our area, and they can therefore use our ranks and be hailed on the road. But unlike private hire vehicles that are limited to the operator and the drivers within the area that they're licensed, the trifecta of licences, Hackneys can work for any operator in the country. So there's greater flexibility.
Councillor Keddy.
Thank you, Chair. So out of the fleet of 836 licensed vehicles, is there a percentage of that fleet that you are targeting for wheelchair accessible? No.
We haven't got a figure in mind. I mean, to be honest, we've got quite a good number of wheelchair accessible vehicles when you look at similar authorities. I did do a thing a little while ago. I haven't got it right in front of me. But you know, some authorities have got like one or two. So we have got a good, for the area that we are, we have got a good number. But obviously the issue that we're for now is, do we keep the limit or not? If we remove the limit, anyone could, if they want to put on a Hackney, they can. It's then whether you want to maintain your wheelchair accessible criteria or not. And it might be worth putting something out for the consultation to see whether we need more. We have no unmet need, so people aren't waiting for long periods of time on ranks. That's what the unmet need says. At peak periods during the summer is when the survey was done. Yeah.
Is that unmet needs including the need for wheelchair accessible vehicles, or just unmet need for general availability?
Questions were asked about unmet need, and I think what David's sort of saying is that there's possibly a hidden unmet need because people in wheelchairs and that need those vehicles want to pre-book them, and they're struggling being able to pre-book them. Whether that's, and there'll be numerous factors around that, whether they're already all pre-booked because they're doing hospital journeys or school journeys usually, or they only decide to work at certain times. Most of them they're making the money on all the pre-booked journeys through these contracts that they do. Therefore, they're not available in the evenings when maybe people want to go out and they're trying to pre-book them. But I think that's the difficult thing is people want wheelchair accessible vehicles for pre-booking, but we have only got discretion over hackney carriages which aren't necessarily pre-booked. We have got a wheelchair accessible list, and we have made that accessible on our website, and we do provide numbers for people to phone for those vehicles direct. But it's obviously at the discretion whether the people are working and they want to fulfil those journeys.
Councillor Dower.
So just to clarify, and sorry to labour this point, so we're saying, we're proposing that we remove the limits, but anybody in future who applies for a hackney carriage licence must make their vehicle wheelchair accessible. In my opinion, I know it's about unmet needs, but I've seen it and I've experienced unmet needs coming out of places and going to the rank and waiting for hours for a cab. And I've seen people with disabilities be turned away from cabs because they couldn't get in. So I've actually experienced that within the past 12 months. So I'm just thinking, I just wonder about, are we stopping hackney carriages being licensed because they can't afford to make them wheelchair accessible?
We do have a more generous policy for wheelchair accessible vehicles to a regular saloon type vehicle to encourage that, so that they're not so expensive. It's they can be older and done a greater mileage. So there is actually a carrot, so to speak, to ease that burden. And as my colleague says, if we did that, then most of them wouldn't be here. They'd be somewhere else. It's a balancing act, and it's a very difficult situation.
The other thing is, it takes longer for a wheelchair journey. They have to provide assistance in and to and out of the vehicle, so that there's potential impact on the earnings potential, the number of vehicles journeys that they can do when compared to a non-vehicle journey. But saying that also is they don't have to just fulfil wheelchair accessible journeys. So if they're on the rank, they can pick up anybody. But what you'll find is most of them are doing pre-booked journeys.
You're looking at me now.
Well,
Yes, does the trade have a comment on that at all, David?
Declaration of interest. Our company that I work for or own operate one wheelchair accessible private hire vehicle, and we liaise with another operator that's got two. That's 3 of the 8 private hire vehicles. Our private hire vehicle is busy Monday to Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night, with mostly arranged work. Some of it, sometimes we can fit in ad hoc requests, and we do our best to do so. Other than that, all we can do is pass on telephone numbers of other people who have wheelchair accessible vehicles. As far as wheelchair vehicles that are hackney carriages, yes, and this is one of the points I made in the statement. Though they are hackney carriage, a lot of them are not always immediately available to do wheelchair work, which does slow them down because they have to move the seats and what have you. If they've bought a specific vehicle, it's quite often the case that the space for the wheelchair is obviously at the rear, and they've still got the space for 4 seated passengers. So as Nanka was indicating, there is no reason why those cars, unless they're already pre-booked on a wheelchair accessible job, can't take passengers off a rank, as an ordinary vehicle. Apart from the fact sometimes they're higher to get into, so members of the public don't like that. And there's all this thing. And one of the things that we as a trade want to see is no excuse for not acceding to requests for wheelchair accessible journeys, which is why we're quite happy with the way the policy is worded at the moment, that we surprisingly, because the trade has always been against deregulation, but we have accepted the fact that where we are, we have a form of deregulation at the moment which suits the need of the conurbation. And the increase would only benefit the wheelchair accessible as well as the ordinary passengers, because the vehicles will be able to transport both. They're not limited to transporting people in wheelchairs.
Thank you, David.
So, if the WAVs that you use are always busy and always have work and are overrun quite a lot of the time, I suspect, why do we not have more people with WAVs? What is in your opinion, what is the barrier?
It's the chicken and egg. Where do you expand? Do you over-expand too soon and then get into financial difficulty? But probably the most important reason is not the vehicle, it's the driver. Because the driver of a wheelchair vehicle that is working all day long needs to be of a specific type of person. He needs to be more empathetic, more caring, go the extra mile. And we're very lucky we've got one. But I don't know where we find another.
Thank you. Thank you, David. We've got Councillor Howell on Teams meeting. He's asked to speak. So after Councillor Howell's spoken, I'll ask Councillor Keddy and then Councillor Dower. Councillor Howell?
Yes, thank you. Morning, everybody. So, if I've got this correct, we can't. We're not in a position to insist on more wheelchair provision because we can only do it in relation to hackney cabs, and if we do that, there's a danger that they go and register in a different authority rather than their own, and we lose that provision. Is that correct?
We've got the provision at the moment that any new licences must be hackney carriages must be wheelchair accessible.
They must be, okay.
Yes, we've already got that in. What we're discussing is, do we keep a limit on the number of hackney carriage licences we issue or not? And then it's then got into, do we actually keep it as wheelchair accessible or not? It seems to be. That's sort of what we're discussing at the moment, I think.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering whether the relationship with, I mean, obviously I would assume a lot of the business for the wheelchair provision is actually from the council under council contracts to move people around. Are those contracts more lucrative than picking up somebody on a more casual basis? And I'm just wondering whether, if somebody decides to do this, they'd rather just work completely under a contract with the authority because that's a steadier stream of money and at a higher rate than picking somebody, off on a more casual job. Thank you.
I can't answer that question. I don't get involved in that aspect of the contract work. That's our passenger transportation services. I know it's not just the council. I know the hospital has passenger services as well for people that need that extra support going into and out of the hospital. But I can't say whether they earn more money or not. I mean, it might be that we ask as part of our consultation, for feedback on people's views on, are there enough wheelchair accessible vehicles or not, and how do you take them? How do you book them? So if they're booking via a private hire operator, controversially, this might make David a bit annoyed, but we could look at within our operator policy saying operators that have more than maybe 10 vehicles have to have a percentage of wheelchair accessible vehicles on their fleet.
Yeah, I mean,
That might encourage it.
yeah. I'm just clearly the council is responsible for a lot of this, so I just wonder if there may be a Chinese rule which prevents you from identifying how much we're actually paid for the licensing committee's purposes. But if there isn't, perhaps we should inquire, internally.
Is that it, Councillor Howell?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keddy.
Thank you, Chair. Nananka, you used a term that I found quite interesting, hidden unmet need for wheelchair accessible vehicles. We can't really quantify a hidden unmet need, and that seems to be the nub of the problem here, that's defining whether we retain the 15 licence limit along with the requirement for all new licences for hackneys to be WAVs. You also noted that there may be a possible future consultation that could attempt to quantify that unmet need. That to me sounds like quite a good approach, so that we're dealing with an evidence base. However, it doesn't help us come to a decision in this meeting today.
No, but obviously this is a draft that will come back to you. So we could say that we would consult on the draft, removing the quantity, because I think there's two issues here. Do we remove the limit on the numbers, which is what's proposed within this? There's no change in the policy proposed with regard to the requirement for wheelchair accessible vehicles for hackneys, but we are open to a discussion on that, and then maybe after the consultation has ended, when we have further workshops, we can discuss the feedback that we've received, and then we can then bring that feedback and consult discussion back to this meeting. What I will say is, this policy has changed, as Trudy has said. When we first did the policy, initially the requirements for the wheelchair accessible vehicles were mirrored by the requirements of any vehicle. We had listened to feedback from the trade, and we also had a workshop with a disability group. We went along and said, what are your barriers? What are your thoughts about the policy and everything? And it was very interesting that they thought that our policy of requiring drivers to be trained was putting a barrier to preventing drivers wanting to fulfil these journeys, because they've got to have an extra training on the use of safely transporting somebody in a wheelchair. But conversely, the feedback was also, but I've been felt unsafe because I wasn't transported properly. So, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of approach. We do make sure that all of our drivers, if they are driving a wheelchair accessible vehicle, that they have training on that vehicle, because they're all different, and how you load that passenger in a wheelchair safely differs between them, whether it's a hoist or a ramp. So we make sure that they do that, and they do that as refresher training. But I think it's a moving feast, but I do think we need to have maybe a better idea of how they're accessing these vehicles. Is it via operators pre-booked, which I suspect it is, in which case maybe having a look at a requirement on our operator licences so that they have to have a certain number, a percentage, would be quite good. Like say maybe 10% if you've got more than 10 vehicles, which would then, the operators would then be encouraging people with wheelchair accessible vehicles onto their books, which would be great. We know some people do come in and, London, all of their cabs, as it were, are wheelchair accessible because of that, and that's what we are trying to do as well within ours. That's not to say that our already licensed hackneys have all got to be wheelchair accessible. So if we've got a certain number historically in Bournemouth that had to be wheelchair accessible, so they can only replace them with a wheelchair accessible vehicle, but the rest of them don't have to be. So we do have a good mix of non-wheelchair and wheelchair on the fleet with that as well. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Nananka. Councillor Dower.
Okay, so final point on this. So I really like what you've just said about, so each operator has a target of wheelchair accessible. I think that's a really good idea, and I like that. But together with that, I would prefer that we didn't say that if we can remove the limit of licences, but also remove the restriction on saying that they have to be all sort of built for disability.
It is two separate things. So a quantity limit is within the legislation. It says you can set a quantity limit. If you do, you have to do this unmet needs survey every 3 years. And you know, the policy is proposing that we remove that limit. So, and I think, you know, my suggestion would we go forward with that with regard to the consultation, and then within the consultation we ask for feedback on whether people support maintaining that Hackneys should only be wheelchair accessible, or they remove that requirement. But we do risk, if we remove that requirement, we won't have enough, and we have to consider all of our people. You know, we've got a public sector equality duty to conscientiously think about everybody that is accessing our fleet, and you know, they need to be able to be able to pick up the phone and book one if they wish. And at the moment, I don't believe that is capable of being done.
So would the other option, you know, about making sure that each operator has a certain percentage of wheelchair accessible, would that sort of like support that?
Well, it's certainly not going to hurt, is it? No. But I think, again, it's not within this policy, but I think from the consultation we can ask that as a specific question and get feedback on views, and then we can come back and discuss that at the next committee.
Councillor Sidaway.
Thank you, Chair. I'm confused about one part of that. If you say 10% have to be wheelchair accessible, and the trade is saying they haven't got any drivers, you're surely just curtailing the trade, because if you say 10% and they've got 20 cars and they can only find one, so should we not be looking at drivers rather than vehicles at this point? Because it's a fairly moot point if you haven't got anybody to drive the damn thing.
1,195 drivers and 836 vehicles.
But not the one to drive wheelchair or trained and have the empathy to do a wheelchair accessible vehicle. That's the point that's been made clearly.
Yes, but the legislation only allows us to dictate the type of vehicle for Hackney carriages only. It doesn't say you must only license these drivers for Hackney for wheelchair accessible vehicles.
I understand, but if the fact is that you can only find one, then saying you must have three is useless, really, because you can't have three.
Yeah,
so I understand you can't change that.
A policy is just that. It's a policy. It's a guidance. So if it came down to it, and people were saying, look, all of the wheelchair accessible vehicles that you've got licensed are already on people's books, we haven't got any more available, then we're not going to say, oh God, we're going to prosecute you, or we're going to take you to, you know, it would be a way of encouraging those private hire operators that maybe haven't got very many. We have got, like we say, you know, that's 2 operators, they've got 3. Well, we've got another 50 odd maybe somewhere around, that we can encourage them to then accept wider bookings. And if they're accepting wider bookings and they realise that there is work out there, more drivers will be willing to take those vehicles on.
Okay.
Councillor Keddy.
Can but try.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted a point of clarity around the limits. So before there was a requirement for wheelchair accessible vehicles, there was actually a wait list for Hackney carriage licences. If we removed the requirement, do you think we would end up with a wait list again?
Well, if we're not requiring a
Wheelchair accessible.
well, if we're not having a limit on the number of vehicles,
Yeah.
there won't be a waiting list, will there? Because if you want to have a Hackney carriage licence,
Retaining the 15 limit, but removing the wheelchair accessible vehicle.
if you removed the wheelchair accessible requirement but retained the limit, I would suspect that we would have quite quickly they'd all be taken up, snatched up. And we would then have a waiting list for the 2 zones again.
Okay, so the requirement is reducing applications in effect.
You mean the Hackney carriage?
The
wheelchair
requirement
accessible?
for wheelchair accessible vehicles
I
is
think
having an effect on licence applications.
I think it is. It is controlling the number of Hackney carriage licences that we have in this area. There is no impact on the number of private hire licences, and you're not inundated with them because people aren't going to invest in a business if there's already enough work in the area.
Thank you.
Councillor Chapman. Or
Is there a requirement for? Obviously, we've got a certain number of WAVs and drivers, and obviously, drivers do swap around cars and that sort of stuff. Does the driver of the WAV at any moment in time have to be trained, WAV trained, or can they just drive it as a private hire and okay?
No, because if they're in a wheelchair accessible vehicle, we require them to be trained because they have to be able to fulfil that journey. So if somebody in a wheelchair comes to the station and there's lots of saloons and there's a Hackney carriage there able to transport it, that person must be able to provide them with legally with the they can't say no, and they need to be able to provide them with the assistance that they need to be able to be loaded into that vehicle. So yes, they have to be, unless they're medically exempt.
thank you, Ninanka. In an effort to try and move this forward, I know Ninanka knows that I've always advocated that there shouldn't be a restriction on licences. But then you have the issue of the wheelchair accessible vehicles. And I agree with what you said with regards to asking the public their views with regards to, is there a greater need for wheelchair accessible vehicles? So it's just how we were going to put that in the draft for it to go out to consultation.
Well, I don't think it needs to be within the draft policy, but when we're doing the consultation, we can have that as a question within the consultation. So we say we've got this policy. There is a requirement for Hackney carriages, any new Hackney carriages, to be wheelchair accessible. Do you support this or not? Do you have trouble booking a wheelchair accessible vehicle if you need one? Do you pre-book your wheelchair accessible vehicles, or do you prefer to go to a rank? So we can ask those sort of type of questions, which would then provide us with a fuller picture when we come back to discuss it.
And can I ask, would it be possible for those questions to come to the committee before the document actually goes out, or are we restricted for time now?
We're not going to start the consultation till after Christmas and the New Year anyway. I'm happy to, when it's all drafted up, issue it to everybody for feedback. We don't want to wait for another committee, I presume, but I'm happy to say, well, this is what I've drafted, give me your thoughts, and then that's not a problem at all. I did that before.
Members happy with that? Okay, that's super. Thank you very much. Thanks, Anaka.
Thank you. Got to remember what number I was on now. I know it's 16 point something, so I think it was...
Forget that, surely.
16.2. Yeah, so 16.3 was amended the wording for any new licences will only be for wheelchair accessible vehicles. That'll be for discussion at a later date. 16.4 amended wording regarding replacement of existing licensed Hackney carriages. 16.5 amended the wording for clarity, and then we've got the current numbers 16.5 and 16.6 have been deleted. 17.1 we've updated the wording to reflect ongoing requirements, and 17.2 the livery standards clarified must be fixed. We've had a few where the stickers and things have been magnetised, so they're taking them off, which is a bit naughty. So we want them to be fixed onto the vehicles. 17.3 has been deleted. 18.2 amended for clarity. 18.4 wording changed from should to must. 18.5 new wording around purpose-built vehicle roof sign. 19.1, driver badge visible to passengers. 19.4 has been deleted. 20.5, amended or clarify I haven't got a clue what I've put there. Its next paragraph's been deleted anyway. 21.1, added word same. So 21.2, updated wording to reflect ongoing requirement. 21.3, amended for clarity. 21.4, new paragraph to not allow dual plating. It makes it very difficult when we're looking at enforcement, when you've got somebody with a licence plate from a different area and they'll say, well, actually we're working under that plate, not your plate, when you're trying to enforce. So we actually don't want our vehicles to be dual plated. 22.1, amended for clarity. 22.3, deleted and replaced for clarity. So that's just been reworded basically. 22.4, amended receipt information. I think that was for clarity as well, wasn't it? Because it was a bit confusing. 22.5, 6 and 8 have been deleted. 22.7 has been retained and renumbered. 23.2 has been amended for clarity. 24.1, again, driver badge visible to the passenger. 24.2, a minor amendment. 24.5 currently has been deleted and obviously it's been reworded then. 25.3 is a minor amendment, and 26.2 a minor amendment. And then under 27.7, bullet points deleted. This ensures any changes to the document requirements do not result in the policy change being required. 30.1 and 2, amend for clarity and remove reference to the driver. And then we're on to the Appendix A. Sections 1 and 2 have been deleted, and then there's a new section heading speciality private hire vehicles. There's a note where the amended wording's been amended, and then section 4's been deleted. And then in Appendix B, there's a new appendix, private hire plate exemptions. Appendix C, new one, which was formerly Appendix B. So we've deleted the convictions policy, and that's why we've got a new Appendix B, C. And Appendix D, we've amended the wording, the title, and new wording to provide context and information about the regulatory body. This is all about CCTV requirements, and it's a summary of CCT. We've got new content to summarise the requirements. Appendix D, Section 3, current has been deleted and it's been replaced with information recorded by the CCTV system, and we've got content sections 2 to 4 have been deleted and replaced with new sections 29 to 31. The data controller, new sections 32 to 35, is all current content was deleted and it's been replaced because there's been quite a lot of updates from the Information Commissioner's Office, who oversees the requirements for providing CCTV in vehicles. The data processor, we've replaced new section 36 and current number 2 has been deleted. There's a new section, signage requirements for CCTV and dash cams, and there's new content at sections 40 to 42. So any questions around CCTV requirements? Nope. Okay. Appendix E, advertising and signs guidance. We've got new paragraphs 1 and 2, and we've amended paragraph 3. The external bit has been deleted, and then private hire operator on any vehicle, bullet points been amended to reflect clearer guidance and signage requirements. For all vehicles, that was deleted. And then third-party advertising was amended wording and bullet points added to reflect the signage requirements. And section 4 had a word. We added a word. Any questions? I think we'll need to lie down in a darkened room after that, don't we? So as Councillor Flagg has said, now ask you to either agree the draft as it's presented, make any amendments, and then it will go out for, I think we'll put 8-week consultation starting in January sometime, once we've agreed all of the questions that we're going to ask.
Thank you, Nananka. Can I just, I recall some correspondence from Councillor Farquhar regarding the requirement of CCTV in taxi cabs. And I wondered if you could just explain the situation to the members, please.
Take a deep breath. Okay, so at the moment, our policy allows our licence holders the discretion as to whether they wish to install CCTV or not within their vehicles. If they do wish to install CCTV, it has to meet the Information Commissioner's requirements as set out within our policy, and they notify us that it's in the vehicles. It's not a mandatory requirement. We have not set it out as a mandatory requirement. There's quite a lot of steps if we wish to make it a mandatory requirement, not least of which is a needs assessment, as it were, to determine whether we need that in our vehicles. And we have obviously things to consider like the cost to our trade and the impact it could have on our licence holders. It may well mean that licence holders would go elsewhere to other areas which may not require them to have CCTV in their vehicles. So it's really whether members wanted to have, again, we can include it in our consultation perhaps, to say, ask for public opinion as to whether they would support CCTV within as a mandatory requirement, or they're happy with the discretion. It is a tricky one. There's a lot of requirements for CCTV. I did have a quick look at the number of complaints that we get. And you have to demonstrate that mandating CCTV in all of your vehicles is a proportionate response to a problem, because you will be capturing personal data. The council would have to become the data controller. So there's a lot of issues to consider. We, I don't believe, have a big problem in the BCP area. Not as far as I'm aware. We don't get a lot of referrals from the police about issues. Everyone could say, well, it would be a lot easier if you had CCTV to determine a point, but we've usually got enough evidence or information when we do get complaints or issues to be able to resolve them. So it's down to you.
Councillor Dower.
Just a quick one here. So have we got any examples of other authorities that have mandated CCTV in vehicles?
There are other authorities. So Southampton, I believe, has a CCTV requirement. Not everywhere has CCTV, and you have to think about the requirements of maybe neighbouring authorities who don't have. Certainly New Forest and Dorset do not require CCTV in their vehicles. We are more of an urban conurbation, so but we have to determine whether there is a need, and we have to have the evidence to support that. And like I say, that when we looked at it and the evidence initially, when we were looking at the policy a few years ago, there wasn't any, and I have to admit I don't know whether we would get any evidence now to support it.
Councillor Sidaway.
This might just be because I'm fairly new to the committee that I don't know what is the nature of the problem. You say you've got to solve it. So what are the complaints that you're talking about?
Well, as far as I'm aware, there is not a problem. But the guidance basically says if you are going to mandate CCTV, it has to be proportionate to the problem that you've identified. A member of the committee did say, well, I would like to propose that we maybe consider mandating CCTV, because I think it would make when we're dealing with complaints a lot easier. So over the last 12 months, we've had 42 complaints about driver behaviour. Most of them have been resolved informally because they, as I've sort of explained to you, we get complaints and actually the nature of it isn't actually what was reported in the first place. And usually when there is a problem, we can easily determine that there is definitely a problem, and we deal with it accordingly because it's come through from the police or whatever. And we dealt with the expedited revocation quite recently because of information. But like I say, I think if you think about the number of journeys that are fulfilled in a year by our trade, 42 complaints about the driver behaviour is very, very low.
No, that's fine. It was all I needed was the words driver behaviour. To be honest, that is what you're trying to look at. No other issues at all. It's not for any passenger behaviour that the police might want CCTV or. So, as I say, what is the problem with that we think we might be trying to solve? I agree with you. I don't think
the problem is we probably don't know that there is a problem because there's possibly not a problem.
Councillor Harman.
Thank you. Just a few questions I had, and I appreciate what you just said. Potentially there is no problem. But just out of curiosity, for clarity, do any of the cars currently have CCTV? If so, how many? And also the cost implications. So I'd just be curious to know how much it would be and who meets that cost. Is it the council or is it the driver? Thank you.
So the cost would be borne by the licence holder. So the driver's not always the person that holds the licence for the vehicle. So it would be the vehicle licence holder. And
I can't give you numbers on CCTV because it is it's down to the individual. So, and it's for them to record it with the Information Commissioner, etc., etc. So, while we ask for that information to make them aware of what they need, what they have to meet, in the requirements of signage, etc., etc., we don't actually record that information as it is at the moment.
It's not searchable on our database, sorry.
Councillor Chapman-Law.
Don't look at me like that.
Here he comes again.
No, not me again. I've lost my train of thought now. No, surely at the vehicle check stage, when we're doing the 6 monthly checks, do we not note that whether they've got CCTV or not and ensure that they are registered with the ICO, so they are fulfilling their...
The 6 month checks aren't done by my team. Obviously they are done by the depots and the maintenance crew. We don't ask for them to check the CCTV because they are literally just looking at the mechanical safety of the vehicle. I mean, it's something that we can find out that information somehow. We could do a survey of licence holders and just say, can you confirm whether you've got it in your vehicles or not, if that's what you want us to do. But I don't think many have got, if any, I'm not aware of anyone that's put full CCTV in their vehicles. There's a few, but not. Yeah, so an operator might decide that for them, they wish their drivers or their vehicles to have it, in which case they can do that. I didn't know that they were, but they might be. Yeah, if they are, then that's great.
And also some drivers that may have had an incident that, has caused them alarm, so to speak. They may choose to put it in, but because we don't mandate it, we just give them the information they need to make sure they comply with the requirements.
It is their responsibility to comply with those requirements. We don't double check that, as it were.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Can I move away from CCTV and ask a more general question, please?
Of course.
Thank you. The last 6 months, I've travelled to the airport a few times using local taxis. Going to the airport's never an issue. It's expensive, but it's not an issue. Coming home, however, even on a pre-booked fare, is an issue unless you're with one particular firm. Is there any way that the council can talk to the airport about allowing all taxis into the airport?
I'm making a little bit of a face. Obviously, it's private land and private property, and if they have got a contract or a deal with an operator, that's not something that we get involved in. And it's not our job to fetter discretion or get involved in market forces or business deals. And I would be very I don't want to do it.
I don't blame you. However, as a passenger, you're being discriminated by one firm against another. I would like the choice to be able to walk up to a rank and take the first available cab from any firm. That's not available to me. And I was made to wait in the cold for about 25 minutes for a pre-booked car at night, and it was just not on. There's nowhere to shelter, there's nowhere, it's just wrong.
Was your pre-book car late then?
You have to ring them and tell them you've arrived and you're standing at that point.
Obviously, that's not
and-
the airport's fault.
And there's a lot of other people too. Yeah. So, yes, it's probably a taxi fault. And is there anything you can do to lean on them?
Would you like to address the committee, David, regarding this issue?
I'm just thinking of the words to use to not inflame anybody, because we've got a driver on our wheelchair vehicle, but the other vehicles on our fleet do airport runs, long distance journeys only. So I see so many people at airports walking around with their mobile phone, trying to speak to their driver, trying to find out where they are. You won't phone me because I'll be in the arrivals hall with a name board meeting you, and then we'll escort you to the car park. It is bad customer practice. If you want to do anything about it for our local firms, you can maybe add it to the consultation, add it to something that you expect people doing it. But
yes,
I think
please.
it's a.
I'm sorry.
The choice would be find somebody else.
I think we just need to be clear what you're suggesting, David, because I don't think we can mandate as a licensing authority what the airport do. No. What you're suggesting is that private hire operators fulfilling journeys meet planes within the arrivals terminal rather than making their passengers call them when they've arrived, which is, again, down to each individual private hire operator. And if they're not fulfilling your needs, Councillor Williams, maybe you could
I don't
change.
have this issue when I turn up at the railway station. Why have I got it at an airport?
Because the airport's further out and the train station's within Bournemouth area, I would suspect. So it's a lot quicker to come to you.
Yeah. The airport is classified as private land, and because the rank cannot be seen from the road, as in the train station, it is private. So it's between the airport and whoever they choose. That's the problem.
But the rank at Heathrow or Gatwick can only be served. The rank at Heathrow or Gatwick can only be serviced by Hackney carriages licensed in the appropriate area. You know, TfL for Heathrow, Crawley for Gatwick, which is why you can't get. And the other thing they've done is made it the drop-off area only, which they police, which means you've got somewhere to drop off, but they don't want people standing there to get in the car or cars waiting there.
I just wanted to make the point. I just wanted to make the point, and I think it's well made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Dower.
Sorry, going back to CCTV, and I've completely forgotten what I was going to say now. It was about CCTV. Sorry, it's gone. Sorry.
So, members, are there any further questions or debate? Councillor Sidaway.
Might be the same point. I wanted to go back to what Councillor Chapman-Law said. When we check drivers, vehicles, whatever, and we're checking that they comply with a number of issues, aren't we? We're making sure that the vehicle is roadworthy and all of those things. It strikes me that if they've got a CCTV camera, we should make sure that they're doing it properly and that they are registered with the Information Commissioner and not just turning a blind eye to it. because maybe because it's newer technology that it hasn't been given enough thought in the taxi world yet, or taxi regulation world. But I don't see it as any different to any other, making them have a DBS, for example. You know, it feels very similar to me that maybe we should consider that.
Thank you, Councillor Sidaway. Councillor Chapman-Law.
Yeah, and on that, you've just reminded me actually that I submitted a subject access request to a taxi company a little while ago, and they said, "Oh yeah, we'll get the footage off of that dash cam," and nothing ever happened, and I completely forgot about it. I should be chasing.
Councillor Dower.
Yeah, so when we do this consultation, or even in the policy itself, I know what you're saying about not mandating CCTV. I sort of get that, but maybe we put in some kind of like recommendation and say, like, you know, CCTV is recommended, but if you do want to do that, you have to make sure Would that be something that we could put in the policy?
Well, the policy does say if you wish to put in CCTV, here is the requirement. Yeah. So that is in there, and I think, you know, the policy, you don't want it to be too wishy-washy. It's either you mandate it or you don't. We're saying, well, we're not mandating it, but if you do wish to put it in, that is the requirement.
Just add something there. Just ask something. Do you mind?
No problem at all.
When we talked about this a few years ago, wasn't there also, I mean, it's all a bit fuzzy, but there's a lot of different types of systems, isn't there? And there was a concern that somebody could be putting in something cheap and it wouldn't quite, the quality of it wouldn't work. There was a lot of issues, wasn't there, about, you know, it's got to be deleted, the information in a certain time. It was quite a complicated procedure to comply with the data controller sort of regulations, wasn't there?
Yes, which is why we've got a really robust specification within our policy.
Yeah, no, I know. That's why. I know we haven't got the prices of the systems, but they were expensive. We couldn't just have the cheap one that you can just sort of go on Amazon, what have you got? It was quite a lot to it, wasn't there?
I think it's in the region of between £500 and £1,000 a vehicle, isn't it?
I think you're right, but
Generally.
Yeah, generally.
I think, you know, we did do some Institute of Licensing training a little while ago, and I think that it is in the region. You know, it's not a couple of £100 off the back of a lorry. There's only certain providers that can do it to the required standard, and like I say, it's between sort of £500 and £1,000 per vehicle. So it's not an insignificant investment, which is obviously something else that you need to consider when you're thinking about it. But at the moment, the consultation is just on the specification that we've put in within the draft. And I don't know whether anybody wants to make any changes to that.
Thank you.
No, I'd come back on that if I may. I'm not saying I would mandate CCTV, because I wouldn't. But if you have it, I still think the consultation should say that they should be registered with the ICO. We should know that they're using the footage correctly, and they're not taking the footage and doing anything that people do with video that they can do.
So the policy does say that they must be registered with the ICO. Okay. Operationally, what we're saying is you want us to check that they're doing that, which is outside of the policy, so that doesn't need to be in the policy. But what I can do is update our working practices and our guidance to our colleagues at Southcote Road that they record when there's CCTV in the vehicles, and then we can engage with those licence holders to check that they have registered with the ICO. Is that okay for members?
I think that's fine. I think it's looking at your experience of doing it with a vehicle. You know, you must check it's got an MOT or something. And I would say, based on the experience of the people who know way more than I do about this, if does it reach the same standard of having to be checked? Because there will be things you don't check. You just say you must do this. Like the signage, it's not magnetic anymore, for example. You're not going to check that necessarily. So where it is on that scale, I would sort of bow to that experience, but I feel there is something to be looked at there.
So I'll take that on board and I'll add that as an operational thing back outside of the policy, but we will do that.
Thank you, members. Is there any further questions or debate? Can I just check with Councillor Howe is there any further questions or debate on this item?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
In which case, I'm happy to propose that we accept the draft policy as set out with the addition of the questions as proposed by the officer with regards to an addendum which will go out with the consultation but would be agreed by the committee via email prior to that.
Yeah, but because the consultations are hosted on the website, we will basically be forming the questionnaire. So it won't be an addendum to the policy, it will be the questionnaire that goes out as part of it. So the policy as presented today with questions as part of our consultation will go out, is that? Yeah.
That's how I understood it. Are members happy with that? Thank you very much. Mr. Lane, thank you for your attendance. More than happy to leave unless you want to. Thanks very much. Yes, of course. We have a quick 5 minutes for a comfort break, members. Thank you, members. Moving on then to item 7 on this morning's agenda, the review of the BCP Council scrap metal policy. And I'd like to ask Nananka if she'd introduce the item, please.
Can I introduce my colleague Tanya, who's going to introduce the item?
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. So the Scrap Metal Policy Dealers Act allows local authorities to regulate and issue licences to certain types of scrap metal operators. The legislation came into force in 2013, and at that time it was in response to a lot of theft of metal. There are 2 types of licences that can be issued to individuals who operate as a scrap metal dealer, which is defined as someone who buys or sells scrap metal. And there's a collector licences, which are issued to someone who goes door to door collecting metal, so mobile collector licences, or you can get site licences, which, as the name indicates, is premises where scrap metal is stored, so sites where scrap metal is stored. A new policy came into force in 2020 as a result of the merger of 3 councils. The policy is aimed at new applicants and existing licensees in the process of applying for or renewing scrap metal licences, as well as licensing officers, councillors and partner agencies. The policy outlines what steps applicants must follow to obtain and hold a scrap metal dealer licence, and it explains the process that is followed by the licensing authority before a licence can be issued. The policy is reviewed at least every 5 years. This review, the current review that we're looking at the moment, is a light touch review of the previous policy. It's just to bring it up to date and to reflect supplementary guidance amendments issued by the Home Office in January 2023. They merely changed wording and rearranged certain sections. As listed in my report, we've removed the application form from the policy and replaced it with a link so that people can access it from our website. By leaving it attached to the policy, it meant that individuals would not always be using the most up-to-date application. So this avoids any issues with the applications and the versions that are being used. So members are asked to decide on whether to approve the policy as drafted or make any changes they feel are required. If the amendments are agreed and the draft policy approved, it will be presented to full council for ratification. Do members want me to go through? I have listed it on here, all the changes I've made, but just want to check if you want me to go through any of the changes step by step.
I think it would be beneficial if you could go through the document.
I'll try and do it all at the same time. So on the front page, the dates, so if I go through, the dates on the front page have been amended from 2020-25 to 25-2030. The revised review date, also on the front page, has been changed, so it goes from 2020 to 2025. On page 1, we've removed reference to Appendix B, which is the application form and guidance, which is what I mentioned earlier. It's just so that it's always up to date, and if we give it a link, they always go to the correct application form rather than use the one that was on the policy, which could change. On page 2, it was to replace paragraph 3.1, which states currently there were no previous policies by Bournemouth Borough Council, Christchurch Borough Council or the Borough of Poole. With this policy replaces Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council's previous policy dated 2020. On page 3 is to amend the wording from tradesman to tradesperson. On page 5, to update paragraph 8.3 to make it clearer to the reader and replace the current paragraph which states the site licence also permits the licence holder to act as a collector, and replace it with the site licence also permits the licence holder to collect waste materials by arrangement from a location to the site. However, it cannot regularly collect waste materials from door-to-door visits. That's just to clarify. And paragraph 9.12, applicants must ensure, that's to add that paragraph, Applicants must ensure they understand the legal obligations of holding a scrap metal dealer's licence. The updated paragraph 10.1 to remove reference to application from format Appendix B and include the link to our website where updated application form is available, as previously discussed. Amend paragraph 10.3 to add from at the end of the paragraph to make it clearer. It now reads, the application for a collector's licence only allows a business or individual to operate only within the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area. Therefore, applicants wishing to operate across borders will be required to obtain a further collector's licence from the relevant local authority where they wish to collect and sell from. Add paragraph 10.10 to read, there is no provision to transfer a licence from one person to another. And then finally, it was formatting of the paragraphs following all the amendments that I've listed above. It's not proposed that these changes will be subject to consultation. They're minor and do not impact on the applicants or impose any additional requirements. Okay.
Thank you, Tanya. Do members have any questions of the officer at all? No. In which case, any debate? No debate. In which case, then, members, it's recommended that members consider the draft policy as presented, and the policy will then be presented to full council for ratification. Are members in agreement?
Agreed.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tanya. Item 8, Hush Club petition. Members, this is a referral from full council, and can I ask Nananka to present the report, please?
Thank you. Just find my little section. It's a bit of a so this is an information-only report. So a petition was submitted to full council, which was circulated in the belief that the council had issued a ban on Hush Club events being held on the Boscombe Overcliff Drive at land adjacent to Cafe Riva, which occurred under the permission of temporary event notices. The event had resulted in complaints to the Environmental Health Department, who had engaged with the operators, and the event did take place this August 2024. I can confirm that the licensing team have had no indications that the event would be banned. However, all such events are subject to the consultation with the police and environmental health on a case-by-case basis, as any temporary event notice is. So any further application for a 10 at this location will be subject to the legislative requirements, and if any representation against the application is submitted, the matter will be referred to a subcommittee for consideration. This report is the council's response to the petition even. That's all I can say, really.
Thank you, Nananka. Members, I would reiterate that this item is for noting, but if members wish to make any comments or debate, I'm happy to open it to the floor. Councillor Chapman-Law.
I'm just trying to remember the timeline of this. So the Hush Club this year in August happened in August. When did I can't remember when did the petition come to the council?
15th of October, the council meeting was held.
Right, and they had a TEN for this year, and that was approved and fine.
Yes.
And have they applied for one for next year, for the next event?
No. Temporary event notices can be submitted, up to 10 working days prior to an event taking place.
And the council has not said that they can't do it. They haven't said there's no ban on it or anything like that at all.
No.
Okay, that's well, I just wanted to get that out there.
Councillor Keddy.
Thank you, Chair. They announced prior to the event in August that they weren't going to be continuing, I believe. Were any complaints received by EHO or statutory authorities regarding the August event in particular?
I cannot tell you with any degree of accuracy, because I didn't want to get into a debate about an application that is not before you today.
Councillor Dower.
I just want to say that I sort of note the recommendation, and I think it's a sensible approach that we're taking, that they apply for a temporary event notice for each year, and then it just gets considered at the time.
Thank you. Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, for me, when it came to full council, and also the report is really good, because I think there were two basic things. So there's the licence for Cafe Riva, and we've got the licence here, and as far as I'm aware, there's been no issues or requests from the police to review the licence or any other party to review the licence. There might have been, as suggested, a few complaints about noise, but again, it seems you would think that if it didn't go any further, the noise complaints were addressed with Cafe Riva and resolved. The speakers obviously seem to be a bit of an issue about the direction and things like that, but again, if those are brought up with environmental health, you would think they would address it, and if there was a bigger issue, the police. And then, yeah, TEN's licence, again, individual basis. I've dealt with TEN's licence, and we have a review after the event. If there's been any issues, I'm sure the authority wouldn't issue a TENS, or they're put on special clauses. So yeah, I think it seemed to be a bit of confusion about the two different licensings and the TENS, and hopefully going forward it will be clearer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hilliard. Councillor Keddy.
So just one final note and comment. As far as this committee is concerned, there is no ban. There never was a ban, and the Hush Club are free to make an application through the temporary event notice scheme, as with any other temporary event.
That's correct. You know, a temporary event is a notification. It's not an application. They're notifying us of their intention to undertake an event for up to 499 people only, and they are entitled to put in that application, as is anybody. So there is no ban on that in place.
Thank you for the clarity. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Chair. That reminded me, because obviously I think there was speculation that obviously because it is outside to an extent the remit of Cafe Riva and it's along the cliff top, that potentially there are more than 500 people. So what does that become? If the licence is for that and it just sprawls. Thank you.
Anka.
I think you have to. It's a interesting location, I would say. What Hush Club would say is that their event and their takes place within a demarked area for 499 people, and they haven't got any control over lots of other people that may come to enjoy the music on the public open space next to the venue and location.
Thank you for that clarification. Right, if there's no further questions or debate, the recommendation is that the report be noted, and I'll propose that from the chair. Members happy?
Agreed.
Thank you. And finally, on this morning's agenda, item 9, the forward plan. Nananka. Oh, just before, we will also be being joined by Sophie Sajic, I think, on Teams, head of the public protection. Not sure is she there?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I am indeed, in very large screen by the looks of it.
You're huge. Okay. Okay. So on the forward plan, the first three items actually are what we've discussed today, and item number 4. The update on the sex establishment policy is what Sophie is here to provide an update to members for. So I'll over to Sophie.
Thanks, Nananka. So yeah, obviously licensing policy also sits with the portfolio holder for housing and regulatory services. Members may be aware that we had some quite significant budget cuts in public protection last year, and as such are currently operating at a statutory minimum. I know that the issue around a sexual establishment policy is quite a contentious one. Obviously, we have had history of putting a policy in place and having that come through a judicial review process. To make it clear to members, it's not a statutory requirement for us to hold a policy. And at this stage, as we are working to a statutory minimum only, we are not looking at pursuing it. If we were to look to pursue it, Cabinet would need to look at a budget attached to that on the basis of the requirement around legal advice and the likelihood that whatever policy were put in place, it would be contentious. We've seen nationally other issues around judicial reviews. So, for example, where there's been a zero policy in Glasgow and in other areas as well. So members do have the ability to refuse applications as per the normal licensing regime, aligned to potential changes in the area, and we are going to look to explore further how we can support members around making the decisions around individual premises, but we're not looking at pursuing a policy at this time. So that was an update, as I know that there's a forward plan agenda to consider whether or not we want a policy, but given the current financial climate and the challenges around a policy, that's not something that we can look to pursue at the moment with the resources that we have.
Thank you, Sophie. Can I just ask if the members have any questions for Sophie at all before we move on to the next item on the forward plan? Do members have any questions at all? Councillor Dower.
Hi, Sophie. Yeah, just one comment. I'm disappointed that we're not actually going to do this. I think it's something that we do need, but I can obviously understand the reasons why we're not doing it at this time. Does that mean that in the future we'd be able to reconsider that decision?
Yes, I think if the financial situation is different and if we're in a better position from a resourcing perspective, it may be something we can look at at a later date. What I would say is there's definitely things that we can do to support members in their decision making in the meantime, to see whether or not we require a policy or whether or not we're comfortable within our decision making within each individual application. So we'll go through that process into the new year and further support members around the decisions when our sexual establishment premises do come up for renewal. But if it is something that politically we want to pursue at a later date, then that's a discussion that we can hold with the portfolio holder.
Thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Yes, can I just say that I support Michelle in what she said. I'd like to see a policy.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Keddy.
Just to join my colleagues in noting that I do understand that this is not the time with the current constraints, but would look to the future when the situation changes that we can revisit this. I would also note that we have a workshop and informal briefing planned for early next year, I believe.
Yes.
Is that right?
It's on the forward plan. It's something that we put in actually to address this item. So, looking at what Sophie said, supporting members in making these decisions and how we can ensure that we're making robust decisions that everyone's comfortable with. And we will look at doing that, starting some training after the next full committee in March.
Thank you.
Councillor Tidaway.
Just wanted to check. I'm more interested in a debate about why you would need one and why you wouldn't need one, because, again, only having been to a couple of meetings so far, some of the conversations I've had have indicated that they may be more trouble than they're worth anyway. So I'd probably prefer a debate around that at the start of whether what it's going to say, because you might just find that it's, we might persuade people that it's better not to have one, or it's better to have one. And I'm open-minded, as I don't know enough about it yet, but some of the conversations I've had have led me to believe that we might need that first.
Is that something that could be incorporated in our proposed review of this item?
Well, I think, as Sophie said, really, it's not something that we can consider in the next probably financial year, but we could put it on the forward plan maybe for 2026 to consider whether we have a discussion around whether we have one or not, and then look at the financial situation and the resourcing situation to see if something that, if it is decided by members that they want to do, we can accommodate that, but it certainly isn't something that we can look at in the next financial year.
Yeah. Are you happy with that, Councillor Sidaway?
I'm very happy with that, thank you, yes.
Thank you.
I didn't want to go straight to the fact that whenever we have got money, we will just say, well, we're going to create one. I wanted to decide whether we needed to create one before we actually spend that money anyway, even if we had it. So.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, can I just say thank you, Sophie, for addressing the committee this morning. Thank you very much. And ask...
No problem.
And ask Nenanka if she would move on to item 5.
Yes, so item 5 is the pleasure boats and boat persons licensing policy. Members considered a draft quite some time ago now, it's over a year, and due to sensitivities around the incidents that occurred on the beach, it never went out to public consultation. We haven't sat still on it. What we have done is undertaken sort of direct consultation with the harbour masters and boat inspectors. So what we're intending is, as it's a new committee, and actually the draft, as agreed by the previous committee, is looking a bit different now. I think we're planning to bring that back to you to consider again before it goes out to public consultation. And again, there's no previous policy on that, but as we've done pretty much most of the work over the last sort of 18 months, it seems to, we don't want that to go to waste. So we'll bring that back in March to you. An update on item 6. David Lane didn't mention it here, but he did mention to me previous to the policy discussion that the trade had initially emailed me a few weeks back now to say that they were going to request a review of the Hackney carriage tariffs, but he has actually confirmed to me earlier today that they're not actually going to seek a review of that at this time or in the early new year. So that can come off the forward plan for now, and we'll await any feedback from the trade if and when they wish to have a look at that. But we will be looking at a review of the non-statutory set licensing fees. They're the fees that we set as a licensing authority that we charge for the administration of the licenses, and that's the annual sort of fee of those, review of it. And some of those fees are subject to consultation as set out within the legislation, but not all of them. It's all a bit weird, but yeah, that'll be in March. And then in May next year, we'll be bringing back the review of the statement of licensing policy, which is currently out for public consultation. So once that consultation, I think, finishes sort of towards the end of this month, I will call another members' workshop to discuss the feedback that we've received, look at that, and then bring all of that back to agree a final version of the policy in May. And we've just had ratification at full council this week of the current new statement of gambling principles, which was just a really light touch one. And I think there's a meeting in March with the Gambling Commission who will be giving us an update on their guidance. And once they've issued their new guidance, we will do a full review of our policy to make sure it reflects the changes that are happening with that. So that there is a date to be confirmed in that, because we don't know what that date will be. And then finally, bringing back what we've just been discussing, not until September, because I've got a heck of a lot on my plate and I just won't get everything done in time for any of the previous committees. But that gives us time to really fully consider all of the feedback that we've got and make sure our qualities impact assessment has been properly considered. And when we bring it back, obviously, we will then undertake a discussion around the public sector equality duty around these policies when we're finalising them, so that it's really clear that we've considered all of those issues and impacts as part of our decision-making process. And then just looking at the training, and I really would welcome feedback from members as to any other training things that you think you would benefit from. So as I've said, we've suggested sex establishments, applications, renewals, training and briefing. I can give you a really good briefing on the story so far, how we got to where we are today, what happened previously with the policy, why it didn't succeed at the judicial review, where we are now, and then, you know, what we can do to support everyone in making decisions at this time. And then, you know, if you've got anything else you think you want a discussion on, any topics, quite happy to add them in.
Anything come to mind at the moment? No. I'm sure that we can forward.
I think taxis is always a good one.
Pieces on an email.
Fit and proper people, considering, you know,
training.
the fit and proper training maybe is always quite a good discussion.
There is the new IOL guidance.
Yeah, there's new IOL guidance coming out.
Which, to be fair, I've not read.
It's quite, yeah, it's all right. It's not very different from the last guidance.
So are members happy that we add that to the training sessions?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Keddy.
I am interested in the policy and approach around contraband tobacco and illegal vapes, and just the general kind of process, how we hold these shops accountable.
Obviously, these aren't licensable activities, so
Are
it's
they
not
not
the
licensable?
purview of the committee.
So that's trading standards.
That is what I am. I can take my hat off, my licensing hat. I am the manager of the trading standards team, and we do a lot of work with partner agencies, the police and HMRC, with regards to these premises. Very few of the vape shops and premises that sell these type of illicit things are licensed. It really is. They are not. You know, I was surprised actually. But we have done a lot. Actually, I'll just a good story for you. My first couple of weeks is being a licensed trading standards manager. Of course, you know, not really my cup of tea, and I didn't have a lot of background information. But we were doing an exercise with HMRC, going into some of these places with the sniffer dog that sniffs out illicit material. And I get a phone call from one of the officers, and she says, right, and I've got this video. And she goes, I'm in a toilet. Oh, congratulations. So the dog has indicated that there's contraband behind this newly installed tiled wall. Can we break it down? What can I say? Yeah, go for it. So we did. And the thing is, people are hiding these things with using electromagnets, so you don't know that it's there. But you know, we go out with the dogs. It's really quite interesting. But the team do go out and do visits, and we have seized a lot of contraband this year, illicit vapes that, you know, are not meeting the safety requirements. You know, they're not what they say they are on the tin. They have too many puffs per thing. There's, you know, it's quite set out what they are and are not, and we do a lot of work around that. And I can say that our evidence store is full of seized gear. Yes.
I'm sorry to hear it is beyond the scope of licensing, but I'm really pleased to hear about the action that is being taken. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Nilanka. I think Linda would just like to ask a question.
Also, they're not licensed premises. We obviously can't call in for review or prosecute under Licensing Act. But is there an enforcement route that could be taken? I mean, I know you've got a lot of things that has to be considered when you take that step, but...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there are a number of options that we look at.
Yeah.
Obviously, prosecution is one of them.
Yeah.
Forfeiture orders of the contraband, and also we do look at closing premises, and we have secured the closure of one of the premises. As well. So, you know, quite robust action is taken by the team, and that's a tiny aspect of what the trading standards role is, but it takes up a lot of time.
Thanks, Nilanka. Councillor Chapman-Law.
And do you publicise or anywhere that these actions are being taken against certain shops, certain premises, or is it just generally done sort of in the background?
We do notify our comms team, and they do put out comms. It has been in the Echo a few times.
Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Just to conclude on that, I found out recently that the means of engaging and reporting illicit vape and tobacco premises is via the Citizens Advice Bureau. I thought it would have been via one of the Police 101 or BCP Council routes, but I think it is worth noting that it's via the CAB that if we do experience these in our areas, that's how we engage, I believe.
That is correct. We do. If you go look up vapes trading standards, we have got information on the BCP Council web pages. It does direct you to the Citizens Advice, and nationally, all trading standards complaints are taken by Citizens Advice, who then forward them on to, because they provide a level of consumer advice for every caller.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. There being no further questions or debate, I will bring the meeting to a close and thank everybody for their attendance. Thank you very much.
Chair, sorry,
Can we just bend back to the sex establishment policy? So that
yes,
the
I think
training's still on there, but
just to confirm that that item will be item 9, was it? No.
Yeah, the SEB policy.
4. Item 4. Yeah. Yeah, just to confirm that item will be removed from the forward plan. Members happy? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.